Oops. Once again, some technical difficulties because I'm still getting used to all this. So, yeah, let's get started. Yeah, so once again, a little technical difficulties. I was trying to get a nice opening screen for everybody and get I guess the verse up and everything ready to roll, but once again, I struggled a little bit with it. I'm still getting used to all this. I managed to get some scenes in, so at least I'm not in the middle of all this, so that we could just kind of go around from that to that. So, as I said, like I promise, like I can't promise that there'll never be any hiccups, but I can promise that, as I do this and kind of just get more comfortable with it, that I'm going to learn more and more. So, once again, it was a really crazy day today, and we're in the midst of this move, and just trying to figure out if we're even going to get the house that we've been looking at. We looked at a house this weekend, and it seemed perfect in so many ways, and I was really worried that we weren't going to get it, and because we looked at it on Saturday and put in all of our information and all of the applications and everything, all the references, and our references had told us that they'd contacted them, but at the same time, we hadn't heard back. So, as the topics of the last few kind of live streams I've done have been about is, so much of our reality is based on our mind and the perception that we're putting out there. And, if we constantly are seeing things in a negative way, then that's generally how we see things. And, instead of it just being like, oh, they haven't gotten back to me in a few days, I just started to really go down a negative road. And, I think a lot of it is, like I said, I'm in the midst of a career change and I'm in the midst of trying out this new thing. And I'm a firm believer. One of the mantras I've kind of really had to try to embody the last couple of years, is just the fact that in order to grow, you really have to be, you have to embrace being uncomfortable. It's the only real way to ever really get ahead, or not even get ahead, but like, for instance, I use it a lot because like, this is the part that really changed my life. It was, I used to weigh 285 pounds, and going to the gym and just believing, you start off with just having the faith that if I put in the work and if I stick to this process, that I'll lose the weight, but you just don't see it. You don't see anything coming off day after day, week after week, month after month. Sometimes you don't see much of a change. And it's just that faith and that belief that if I put in the work, then good things are going to happen. And I'm going to get, a lot out of this. And, I'm just going to grow as a person. And as long as you can kind of stick to that and understand that those moments of growth are uncomfortable, like when you're pushing yourself to do something new, or when you're trying something, or like at the gym, you every single time you add more weight, your body tries to kind of fight back. It's not comfortable. None of it's a comfortable process. So all of this growth in world is really like in our life, all of it comes down to whether or not we have control of our mind or our mind has control of us. And so, on that reason, once again, I decided to go with a verse 2.15 that really, in my opinion, it really embodies that whole idea, right? That we need to control our mind. So as usual, we're going to start with the prayers to our spiritual masters. So actually, for anybody who's actually ever trying to keep track of some of these prayers that I do, so this is the one that we say to our spiritual masters every day. And actually yesterday was Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, which is a really important day in our Vaishnav calendar. And the day before that was actually Krishna's appearance day, for anybody that saw the live stream I did that day, right? And it was a crazy party. It was really nuts. And so yesterday was a really nice, more solemn day. We have a lot of respect for Prabhupada. So Om Jnana Tidamandasya Gyanjana Shlakeya Chakshur Anmiltanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. And then we're just going to, I don't think it's actually in here. No, it's not. But I'm going to just say Prabhupada's pranam mantra in honor of him. So, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Te Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachardine Nivri Shesha Shunyavadi Pashtate Deshatardine. Okay, and so today we're going to be working on, a verse that really offers a lot of invaluable wisdom, I think, and again, I tend to really go towards these ones that speak of the mind. Because, in my opinion, this is the big thing that so many of us deal with. And as has been the subject for a few days in a row about stuff is, if we're unaware of the fact that we can either be friends or enemies with our own mind, if we're not unaware of the fact that our own mind can actually sabotage us, at times, it's a very dangerous position to be in, right? Because sometimes we have our worst enemy and he's right next door and we don't even realize it. Right. And so one of the biggest things and one of all my takeaways that I take from the Bhagavad Gita is really how to make friends with the mind and the process that we need to do to go through that. So yam hina vyantyate purusham purusha shaba samaduka sukam dhiram somritat kalpate. O best among men, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So I'm actually going to read the purport for this one today, because for me, this actually it's interesting. Actually, I'm going to read this and then I'll talk to you about what my thoughts are on it in general. One of the interesting things is, I don't know if you know or not, but a sannyasi is a renunciate. So when we, most people in the West anyways, think of a yogi, we often get this idea of these guys in loincloths and, long beards, living out in the forest. And that's really a sannyas. A sannyas is someone who's renounced all material life and has decided to, it depends on which lineage of yoga, but in Vaishnav lineage, for instance, we give up all family ties and just 100% devote ourselves to Krishna. So like all of our gurus, like Prabhupada, for example, was a sannyas. So in order to be a guru, you have to be a sannyas. So that, if you're married, you dissolve your marriage. And it's something that the husband and wife talk about. This isn't something that the husband would just do by himself. Like this is, you have to make sure that your wife and children are all taken care of and everything like that. But just when you see sannyas in here, that's what they're talking about as a renunciate. So anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashram's institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, sannyas, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyas order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationships, to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere, even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similar beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause, he took sannyas and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. So, when I first read this, it was quite shocking, actually, because I was like, oh, well, I have children. And so this is kind of out of my realm, I guess. Any kind of sort of advancement in Krishna consciousness is out of the realm of possibility for me. But later on in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada actually really stresses the fact that grihastas. So what we are like in the householder or like married life, it's called a grihasta, which is, they're talking about the varnashram system institution. So the four orders are a brahmachari, which is like student; grihasta, which is householder or marriage life; vanaprastha, which is like retired life. So when you get, it's supposed to be the age of 50, but obviously like in the modern world things are changing a little bit. But say like before you take sannyas at like whatever 50 or 60 years old, you and your wife both would kind of start to pull back from the duties. So you normally have grown children that could take, if you had a family business, for instance, they could take kind of control of that. They take control of more of the finances and things like this, and make sure you're taken care of. And then you spend more of your time going to, well, you know, like you often see these like prototypical, they live in Florida or like in Vancouver, for instance, a lot of elderly people go and retire on the Sunshine Coast or Vancouver Island. And it's kind of like a resort idea, right? Like, and same thing like this, when we're retired, we're going to go on cruises and in the flowered shirts and things like this, right? And it's a similar idea, but when we go into retired life, what we would do is go and visit holy places of pilgrimage. So go to Vrindavan, go to Mayapur, go to different temples, so that we're not spending our daily 9 to 5 day working. We would then be reading more scriptures, chanting more rounds, doing more seva at the temple, service at the temple, things like this. So that's what the vanaprastha is. And then the next level is sannyas, when you kind of give up everything and devote 100% everything to God. So, you know, what Prabhupada says later, and what my guru Bhakti Marg Swami also talks about, is that like the grihasta is actually in a lot of ways even higher level, because, you know, some people think that because you're married now, it's like, oh, well, you can enjoy sense gratification nonstop, you know, sex with your wife and things like this. And in actuality, it's, you know, a lot harder. You know, like for instance, my wife was on birth control before we became Vaishnav. And the more and more we read about it and read about the soul's, how the soul picks its parents, you know, and it doesn't know whether or not you're on birth control. We had this feeling of like, what if our child was out there wanting to be born? And what if that soul was picking us and we just weren't giving it an opportunity? And obviously comes with some worry, you know, but at the same time, as a grihasta, we have a responsibility to kind of build the next generation of good people. Like we see how the society's going. And, you know, I was at the pool yesterday with my daughter, and we were there, and this little girl kind of had a bit of a fit on the steps to a water slide. And my daughter is just, you know, even though she's only 16 months, she's like, get me to that slide, right? And like, I want to go now. And so this little girl turned around and was like standing there, and Priya wanted to go by her, and she got kind of mad at Priya. Like, how can you get mad at a 16-month-old? And the mother didn't say anything, you know, and she's like, you should wait your turn. And it's like, well, we were waiting, but you got scared and are stuck on the stairs. And now, mind you, this water slide has 2 slides on the top, right? Like, it's not like if Priya went, she wouldn't be able to go. But it's just this idea that, you know, so many kids are being raised by parents who think they're the center of the world and that the whole world revolves around them. And as a consequence, the children are getting the same idea younger and younger. And they're getting more and more of this entitled idea that, you know, everything should be done for them. And in a lot of ways, other people should be serving them. Like we see this all the time, right? Like you open a door for somebody nowadays and they don't even say thank you. It's just like, yeah, you should. They think of themselves almost as royalty. And when we start to kind of develop this more of a Krishna conscious, or even, you know, just a bigger attitude, and we see that we're not the biggest thing on the planet, that there's a God bigger than us, that the planet is also a goddess, and we should be taking care of goddess Bhumi. You know, when we start to realize these things bigger than us, we start to see that we're not the center, and then that's how we start to be able to help society. And if I'm thinking this way, if I'm thinking constantly of how I can help my neighbor, how I can help the planet, how I can help God, how I can help the next generation, it's our duty to have children so that we can pass that along. The only way we have any hope You know, it's so funny to me that we're talking all the time about how we should be having less children and we shouldn't be having children and overpopulation. Well, how do we think that this planet's going to be fixed? It's not going to be fixed by people who are getting older. It's going to be fixed by a younger generation who has a better outlook on life instead of the nihilistic one that's been created for so many years. You know, all these kids have been betrayed by the people in power. And there's a reason why they have such a nihilistic and detrimental outlook on it. Like, it looks like a lot of the people before them didn't give two shits whether or not there was a planet even left for them. You know, so of course they're going to be upset. So it's our duty as people who have a different kind of perspective to have our children and be able to change the mindset of the world, you know? And so, you know, although it stresses a lot about the sannyas in this purport, like I said, Prabhupada later on, and my guru also talks about how the householders, the married couples, the parents are the most actually renounced, because we can't just live for ourselves. Like, even the sannyasis, they are living for Krishna, but it also is kind of selfish, because it's a wonderful, wonderful, like, I wish the other day at Janmashtami, there were so many wonderful devotees that were there all day and got to spend all day with Krishna on the temple grounds. My children aren't ready for that, right? And what I see more and more at our own Iskcon temple is that there's all these kids that are the second generation of parents that gave their whole life, you know, acted like they were already sannyasis. All they did was service at the temple. Well, what about the kids who wanted the attention? You know, and as a result, they've now become resentful of the temple and everything that it brings. And you just don't see them as much. You see them at the festivals. You may see them performing kirtan, but you don't see them wanting to be pujaris. You don't see them wanting to be priests. You don't see them wanting to have kids and get married and grow and make more and more of this Vaishnav etiquette. You don't see them taking Bhakti Shastri or any of the classes or going to Mangalarti like first thing in the morning. You don't see any of this, right? So it's our duty to make sure that our sadhana includes our children. So as grihastas, it's actually more difficult, and we're actually somewhat more renounced, right? Because I have my sadhana at home, I chant my rounds, I have my altar at home, but I also have to be a good husband, and I have to be a good father to my girls, right? And, you know, so again, this verse talking about how the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress is steady in both. Because all these things, you know, none of us want distress or anxiety, but it comes anyway, you know? And it's just like the seasons. We were going over a verse the other day. I think it was actually the last class. Let's see, the previous verse. I want to say it's 2.14. Yeah, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course, right? So non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance, both of them, right? Because that's the thing. You know, you look at material life, especially, we get so excited over the new car or the new clothes or new video game or whatever. And, you know, it doesn't take long for the novelty to wear off. And we're not as happy about it as we once were, or we were when we were, before we even had it, sometimes thinking about how happy we would be. It just doesn't compare, you know? So happiness it's non-permanent and it disappears quickly, but so does unhappiness. And I think so much we try to avoid unhappiness, but whether or not we like it, it's going to come, you know? And so that's why it's so important that we take these different things, that these different processes that are recommended throughout the Vedas, to take advantage of the fact that we can become steady in both happiness and distress. You know, there's a saying that I've heard that, you know, they say it's a Zen saying, but I don't believe it. It sounds too modern to me. But it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I don't really care who made it, who said it, when it was said, whoever did, it's so true, right? Of course, no one ever wants to go to war, but I would sure rather have a country that has some warriors in it than just a country full of gardeners, right? Because yes, of course, we're going to need food, but we're also going to need protection, you know? And so we have to be honest with ourselves about the reality of the world. And we have to know that these bad things are coming, you know, and it's no different than us just pretending that we're not going to get sick and that we don't need to take care of our body and we don't need to exercise. You know, all this stuff is just so silly. We don't want bad situations, but they come. So we need to prepare for both happiness and distress, you know? And like, that's why it's really these dualities of life. We see them in everything. It's not just happiness and distress. It's everything. It's excitement and boredom, laziness and activity. So much of life is completely like the ups and downs of the moment, and a good example is like the stress that we all get at work, right? And we go through these moments of like, oh, it's so busy, and then there's boredom, right? And we have to really be able to become equanimous in those moments of extremes, and we have to understand that they're both going to come and they're both going to be temporary, and it's like that famous saying, this too shall pass. It's like, if we lose ourselves in our own minds, we've lost before we've even begun. And so it's so much that we important that we have to find some sort of balance amidst these dualities, or else it's just going to be game over. And of course, like I said, work and different aspects like this, but it's the personal joys and it's the unexpected things that are just going to come. Like I said, we're moving. We weren't planning on moving. That wasn't something that we thought was going to happen. But you have to, it doesn't matter if I thought it was going to happen, it's happening. And so we have to deal with the reality that's in front of us. And like I said, for myself, I was really witnessing the fact that our mind tends to go towards the worst case scenario all the time. Like I said, just because I hadn't heard for a couple days back from the people about the house, you start to immediately think, well, we're not going to get this. What if we don't get anything? What if I end up homeless? What if my mom now ends up homeless because of me? And like we often notice that although we imagine these worst case scenarios, very, very seldom do they ever even compare to what the reality is. And, that's why it's really important that we keep a bit of a leash on how far our mind fluctuates between these good and bad things, So, once again, it's really important that we become, again, going back to how I had to lose all this weight, right? If I had just gone to the gym once in a while, if I had just changed my diet for one day a week, if I hadn't remained consistent in any sort of fashion, there's no possible way that I would have ever progressed. And it's the same thing when it comes to being mindful, right? Like, for so many lifetimes, we haven't even bothered to attempt to be mindful or to pay attention to what the mind is. And that's the reason why we're all here, is because we've so much identified with our own body and with our own personality and mind and ego that comes along with all this, and thinking our intelligence is our own intelligence is supreme. We end up getting stuck in this cycle of material birth and death. And so it's very important that we develop a routine to start to garner the mindfulness and start to kind of build that muscle up of just being able to battle against the onslaught of thoughts that's just never ending. It's very well known that most people dream every night, even when you don't remember them. And so that just goes to show you how active our mind is, right? So if we don't kind of develop the mindfulness muscle, so if we could call it that, then it's impossible to ever fight it, And so one of the big things, like, as a Vaishnav, we chant 16 rounds a day. So that's 2 hours a day that we vow to. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours a day that we vow to sit with our malas and just say the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we use that mantra. That's the biggest one for us. And like, just so we very clear, mantra comes from two root words. Okay. And so I'm not going to lie to you. I only remember the manas for the first half of it. The tra, I can't quite remember, but manas means mind, and tra, the root of it all basically means to control the mind, or to like, bind the mind, train the mind, this kind of idea. And so that's what a mantra actually is, right? Is just like when you're doing Vipassana meditation, you're using the breath as your anchor. When you use mantra meditation, you use these sacred syllables to help with that process of just being able to get the mind a little bit more under control. and being able to help the mind, will help the mind face the struggle really of what's going on. So I mean, we do that for 2 hours a day, but even if you just started with 2 to 5 minutes of silent meditation, right? And even if you just started with 2 to 5 minutes of guided meditation, it'd be very, very easy to start moving towards more of a direction of having some sort of control over your mind, instead of it being completely you being led around, like we talked about last time, by the mind. Imagining that same idea of the mind being a chariot and our senses being the 5 horses that are pulling that chariot around. And if our whole entire if everything in our life is being kind of taken by the senses, then we're in so much trouble, right? So it's really, really important. It's really important that we get these techniques down, that we could start to kind of take advantage of it, of finding the mindfulness throughout the day. It's so like I said, like even if you just take 5 minutes or so with any of these, it starts to get really, really a lot easier with things. So I mean, and this is simple, right? Like maybe we'll actually, that's so I'm trying to think of the words to put it together, but the best thing that I could think of is actually to do a guided meditation together. So maybe in the last 5 minutes or something like that of today, so in 20 minutes or so, maybe we'll do a quick guided meditation, because like for me, that was one of the big things. Like I had a really hard time getting over how quickly my mind, and there's a reason why a lot of Buddhists call it the monkey mind. And so it took me a long time to get over the chatter of my own mind in order to do just breathing meditation. And so maybe we'll do the guided meditation together in the last couple of minutes. I'll try my best to do one. I haven't really done a script in a while on one, but we'll do our best. And so the big thing again, the whole reason is once we can get into that silent mode of meditation, then we start to kind of be able to separate our thoughts from our soul. We can start to see the difference between what our soul wants and what's really the best thing for us, and where our mind is just our constant chatter. And and again, one of the big things that we really need to start a practice of in order to get to this mode of not only being thankful for obviously the good things, but when the bad things happen, realize that we likely have a lot more things to be thankful for than we don't. And that's the gratitude practice. So just simply starting today with 3 things you're grateful for, and it could just simply be, thank you so much for opening my eyes again today, or thank you for this cup of coffee or cup of tea, or thank you for this glass of water, or thank you for my warm bed, or whatever. Like there's tons of little things that we're always we can be really thankful for. Once we start to develop that mind's eye, you'll see that it becomes a lot easier to see things that make you kind of happy, like yesterday, for instance, for me, I took my daughter swimming, and I was still really tired from Janmashtami, obviously. And, we went. I don't normally take my wallet with us swimming. And for whatever reason, I took it with us, and I got home and I couldn't find it, and I was upset, and the old me would have likely lost my mind about it. I would have likely got so upset about it. And but it took me a couple minutes just to kind of get into this mode of like, you know what? I had a really good time with Priya. I'm really thankful that I had, at least now that I lost the wallet, I have an excuse not to do as much work today, because I was about to go and I had to go for a drive, and I didn't have my wallet now. I can't go be a courier today. I don't have my wallet. What if I get in a car accident? So that's kind of nice. Now I can do that, and so it's just one of these things where if we can slowly build this habit of gratitude in the moments of when we're not grateful at all, we can find the things that we are happy for. And we can start to realize that there's a lot more things in our life that we're grateful for than we're not. So, and one of the things that really helps us too with anxiety is the fact that so much of anxiety is, like I said earlier, built on this idea of fears that aren't even there. We imagine our future, or we imagine things that are going to happen in such a way that it's a negative, it's just a truly negative light. And, you know, as a result, we end up living in the future in a lot of ways. We're never actually experiencing the present. We're just so concerned about what's going to happen next and so scared of all this that it ends up becoming so much larger than life that I find that a lot of people just get carried away with it. And I think that's really obviously anxiety and depression are real things, you know, and they are chemical imbalances, you know. And I heard of somebody talking the other day and saying maybe some scientists came out and said they're not chemical imbalances, but the, you know, serotonin blockers help and all this, whatever they are, they're real. And but I also think that they can also be there's so many things, like, again, you know, an alcoholic is obviously, it's a disease, right? But you don't start with the disease. You start drinking, and it's not like the first drink you can't control yourself. It's this choice that slowly each choice you make, it's like putting a pebble on a weight. And the next thing you know, it's like 3 tons of weight on the scale. And there's no hope in you lifting it off, you know? And so that when that gets to that point, you just can't have a drink anymore. And I think that anxiety, like especially clinical anxiety or depression, it's a very similar thing. It's like we get into this habit of looking in things and all the negative aspects of it, and we just let our mind kind of go into an avalanche, and it builds into this massive snowball. And next thing you know, you can't see past the snowball of negativity, right? All that you can see, it's all jaded by this anxiety and depression. And, you know, I really believe, for me, again, this is from personal, okay? Like I personally, I didn't know it at the time, but I had depression. I didn't deal with my father's death. I didn't deal with so much. I didn't deal with my first child's mother leaving us. I didn't deal with a lot of things. And so as a result, I just thought that's the way I was. I was just angry and sad and tired and lethargic. And, you know, looking back now, these are all symptoms of depression. And the only way that I did it was like similar to taking off the 285 pounds. How did I lose 100 pounds? 1 pound at a time, right? 1 drop of sweat at a time. And the depression was the same thing. How did I get through it? By each single day, once I started to make the choice, trying to do my best to be happy. And obviously some days were harder than others. Yesterday, I had a really bad day yesterday, right? And I just had to make the decision. Okay, I'm going to be sad today, right? That's it. So we're going to just take it easy. So after the kids went to bed, I'm just going to lie on the couch. I'm going to watch some TV, and I'm going to bed. And tomorrow will be a better day. And sometimes you just have to do that. You just have to decide. It's not like, it's not being melodramatic or whatever if you just kind of give in that today is not going to be the best day, right? But at the same time, accepting the fact that just like the negative comes, you're going to have a positive day come as well. Like, it's not the end of the world, and it's not permanent. These things pass, right? And this is where, again, it goes into for me, where the Gita really helps so much with the modern world, because I think these things really do apply to the work environment. You know, like how many times throughout the day, especially in a corporate environment or an environment where you're not the boss necessarily, do you sometimes get thrown under the bus or told things that you just don't think are right or correct or fair? And I think the only way we can ever grow in those situations is by maintaining our composure. And the only way you can maintain your composure in that is by developing a bit of a calloused mind, right? That obviously the mind is happy when things are good, but you also are aware of the fact that the happiness isn't the go-to, right? It's not the way that, it's not the homeostasis. That's not the equilibrium, right? The happiness is just a temporary thing, and we're going to have a crappy day at work too. And that's also just a temporary thing. And we have to also put the proper perspective of what work is. It's not the end of the world if you need to change jobs. It's not the end of the world. Like, so many of us get so deep into payments and rent and everything that we think that we're one decision away from, ruin. And that's just not the case, right? No different than good times and bad times. I'm sure most of us have known good financial times and bad financial times. And if we are honest with ourselves, there's been a lot of it that's kind of been out of our hands. I'm sure some of you have made bad choices financially and good choices financially. But I'm sure that there's also been times, like, again, for us, us being made to move as zero things. We didn't do anything wrong. Just the owners want to sell the house, so we have to move, right? And it's costing us financially, and it's going to cost us more money in rent. And so that is an unexpected thing, and it's taking away money that we didn't think we'd have. Right now, does that mean that I need to go and look for a different job, or I need to? No, it just is the way it is. And just like how right now our financial situation has been a little bit tighter, in 6 months it might be a little bit looser like it was 6 months before, right? And we just have to kind of learn to surf the waves. I saw this thing the other day that apparently it's a far right white supremacist troll thing, but it's the Kali Yuga Surf Club. And anyone who's familiar with the Vedic literature, Kali Yuga is a time of despair, and it's a time of strife, and a time of anger and hypocrisy. And so if we can just manage to surf the waves of Kali Yuga and just kind of go with the flow, we'll really understand that life is actually really great. And the reason why we're here is for exactly that, is to surf the wave, is just to ride it and take the lessons of the good and take the lessons of the bad. And often in my past, at least, I would get into situations where when things were bad, I'd do all the right things. And when things were good, I'd kind of get lazy. And all of us, I think, are guilty of that in some way or another. And so we just have to make sure that we're really walking the line all the time, in the good situations and in the bad situations. We have to really make sure that we're walking a balance of the tightrope of life, right? It's just really, really important. So I don't think there's anybody watching live, but I mean, as usual, I'd like to invite you all, please, any advice, anything that you'd like to see. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how we should do these daily ones. I like the last couple ones on these verses, and I mean, really, it's just because these verses really speak to me. But I also kind of like going through multiple verses in a day as well, because then it kind of can give us a bigger. I find a lot with the Bhagavad Gita. Like, anyone again who is interested in a copy, please let me know. I can send you a copy. I have a few. But anyone who's reading it for the first time, I really recommend reading verse by verse all the way through, so that you really get a better idea of what Krishna's saying. And sometimes when we just read one verse and then tomorrow we read another verse and then the next day another verse, you lose the context of the overall picture of what he's trying to say. For me personally, just these 2:14 and 2:15 are two big ones out of this chapter that have really hit me. And I really use a lot throughout my day, just to kind of bring me a lot of solace, right? Just makes me feel a lot better about the way things are, and really helps me navigate things. So, but I think moving forward, we're going to go back to the original plan of just going verse by verse by verse and reading multiple verses in a day. So yeah, I mean, on that note, let's just kind of go down here and see. Yeah, see, I think actually we've gone to about 24 or something like that, because we did quite a bit about the soul. But yeah, you see there's quite a bit of different context. So, but anyway, we're going to go, let's do this guided breathing today. And so I'll do my best. Like I said, I haven't done a guided meditation in a long time, but I use the I'll just kind of use the one that I do every day in my own mind, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so you can either lay on your back for this, or sit in a chair or on the floor. Ideally, you just want your spine aligned. So some people find it a little easier lying down, but I often find some people also fall asleep when they lay down. So yeah. So just start by either laying on your back or sitting on a chair, and then just breathe naturally. Just in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just start to breathe normally. You're gonna kind of want to go through a couple different levels of breathing just as we get started. So start by focusing on your breath, just normal, nice and calm. And then as you're breathing, I want you to slowly focus on the weight of your body sitting on the chair. Really feel the contact position. So if you're lying down, feel your feet, feel your butt, feel your back, feel your shoulders, feel your hands, feel everything laying and all the weight going down, the gravity of the world pushing down on you. You can close your eyes, but you could also leave your eyes open, just as we're developing this feeling between the breath and the body. Just slowly just keep breathing. And as you're breathing, slowly deepen the breath. You can kind of think, I often imagine myself as being an empty vessel, or a balloon. A balloon's another good example. And with each breath, try to slowly fill up the vessel more and more. So with the next breath, imagine that your breathing goes all the way down to your navel. And as it's going down to your navel, really focus on the feeling of your abdomen or your chest expanding and the sensation of it going up and down. Sometimes I really can feel the way my clothes feel when they're going up and down. So just really focusing on that feeling. Keep focusing on just your chest and your abdomen rising and falling slowly with each breath. And then on the next breath, I want you to really imagine now again that you're in an empty vessel, and really try to let the breath go all the way down to your toes. So really, really deep breath all the way to your toes. Imagine filling up a balloon. You're huge. Picture yourself in your mind's eye, and you're a balloon. And you want to fill up all the way to your toes with the air, and then slowly, slowly, slowly let the air out. If your eyes haven't closed already, please close your eyes. So just keep the breathing really deep. Now I want you to take a really deep breath until I tell you not to. So we're going to do about 5 seconds in. And now same thing, about 5 seconds out. Feel your shoulders drop down. Feel your rib cage relaxing. Finally release it in your abdomen. And then now repeat these deep breaths for a couple minutes. We'll do it for about 2 minutes. So now you can go back to kind of a normal breath. I want you to focus on the breath. And a really easy way to do it is if you count with each breath. So count 1 on in, 2 on out, 3, out 4, in 5, out 6, in breath 8 or 7, sorry, out breath 8, in breath 9, out breath 10. Now do this 3 more times, as counting 1 to 10. So in breath, out breath. 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then now start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So then now one more deep breath. So again, imagine you're a balloon and I want you to breathe all the way till your toes. And slowly out. Now bring your breathing back to normal. And then you can open your eyes. So that's just a really easy, really condensed version. I'll share one on my Instagram page. The one that I do. I'll write it out in a proper script and share it there if anybody'd like it. I can also add it onto the page, or you can just send me a message or comment down below, and I could with your email, and I could send it to you as well. So yeah. So again, just if we can slowly develop a practice like that, that is helping us just understand that mind-body separation a little bit better. And it just gives us a little bit of an opportunity to take, even just a minute. That's all it has to be. Just take a minute, 5 minutes a day. And, it doesn't have to be the 2 hours that we do as Vaishnavas every day. It doesn't have to be 2 hours of mala chanting, right? Of course it should be, and of course that's what you should want to work towards, but don't expect that that's what it has to be, and that if you don't do anything, it's a fail. That's not it at all. Even a minute a day is a massive improvement over your life. So, and then you'll see, like, for what happened with me is I started with 5 minutes, and then you just see the benefit and you just want to add things to it, right? And so again, for me personally, that's where I always will come back to, is the practicality of all this. When you start seeing the results, nobody will have to convince you. You'll want to do these things, you'll want to add them, but you have to be in a position where you're at least open to it and you want to start, right? And take a bit of an accountability for making that decision that you want to start, and realize that there's a place within you that wants to. And then, one of the biggest changes any of us can make is once we start keeping the promises we make to ourselves. It's so easy to keep promises to our friends or family or anything else because we often say them out loud, but so many of the things we say to ourselves, they just get left behind because no one else knows that we promised them. But often at the end of the night when we're lying in bed, our mind will tell us exactly what we need to do and exactly how to fix the things that we want. And we'll often say these things. We're going to do this. We're going to work better. We're going to, work harder. We're going to eat better tomorrow or whatever. And then we just don't follow through. So, meditation is another great example of this, because we often will try to convince ourselves we just don't have the time. But as you can see, it takes no time. Start with 1 minute or 2 minutes. You'll start to see the benefits once you do this consistently. And then you'll just automatically want to add more to it. Once again, one of the things that I love so much about Srila Prabhupada's teachings is that he teaches this as a spiritual science, because just like any other science, if you actually perform and practice some of the techniques that he teaches and that the Bhagavad Gita teaches, you'll start to realize the changes that you can see in your life almost immediately. And it really doesn't take much, like this verse that we read today. It takes no time. Sorry, we were on 215. It takes no time, O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress, is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. This isn't complicated scripture. This isn't some kind of spiritual mumbo jumbo. This is stuff that is absolutely applicable to our day-to-day life. Because like I said, happiness and distress is coming whether you like it or not. We all hope for happiness, but we also all know that distress is coming. It's just around the corner. And both these things are going to come and go very quickly. And so the best thing we can do is try to be steady in both, right? And enjoy them both when they're here, and understand that if in the midst of distress, we can find some gratitude for the things that are positive in our lives, it's going to make those moments of down or depression a little bit easier. And that's again why this is just absolutely timeless wisdom that we can all really use to change our lives almost immediately. So once again, I really appreciate you joining me today. I'm going to be back on Monday with another live stream. I think we're going to stay at the 4 o'clock. I think that's just a good time for me right now, especially with the moves and everything coming up. We do move the end of this month, so at September 30th. And maybe the schedule may change a little bit, but I promise I'm going to keep this up to at least the 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now. And we'll keep it up with that. So please, I encourage you, any of you, please, that have any takeaways or any comments, any suggestions, please leave it in the chat. If anybody wants a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, reach out to me, just send me a message or send me a comment with your email, and I'll get out to you. And we could, especially if you live in the Lower Mainland, I could just deliver it. But if you live anywhere else, I don't mind mailing it. So please let me know, and let's keep this going. And I'd really like to build a community around this of really seeing that the Bhagavad Gita is one of the great gifts of spiritual wisdom, and see that it's really non-sectarian. Again, one of the things Prabhupada really promoted was that Krishna consciousness isn't a religion. It's a philosophy that is applicable to anybody, and you can use it what's already teaching with what you already have. So if you're a Catholic, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, none of this matters, right? Because we all believe in God, and all of us can really believe in the fact that we need to learn how to love God more. And so the Bhagavad Gita is just that. It's just a tool to learn how to love God. And you'll see that in the process of loving God, you'll really learn how to love yourself even more as well. So have a wonderful day. Have a great weekend. Please keep an eye open for my stories. There's going to be a really nice Sunday feast program this weekend, so I'm sure there'll be some video for it. Also, I've been making shorts out of some of these live streams, so keep your eyes open for that. And yeah, as usual, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful, great day. And just remember, the pathway to purpose, it's one day at a time, one step at a time. And we often don't realize that we're always searching, and we don't realize that we're already there. We just have to open our eyes and see the new perspective that's available to us. So have a wonderful day. I hope to see you on Monday.